Okay, I'm back. The memory card ran out on the camera, so I've had to go and clear it off. Okay, we was talking about the pan lever. Okay, it's just made out of just flat steel, and it's quite important that when it's in position it can rotate and it's not tight or anything like that. But this cam here is important. That arc, this arc here acts upon that cam. And what happens is when you pull the trigger, this cam here rotates backwards, pushes on that underneath this lever here, and pushes like that. See, that's in that position there, like that. I'm trying to do it without putting my hands in front of the camera. When you wind it up, that cam goes back. To a point there that can go, that cam, see there, sits on top of that little lever, right? So as soon as this starts to unwind, the lever pushes back. See that this lever here is starting to come back, and that's what opens the pan. The first 10 degrees of rotation, as soon as you pull the trigger, that starts to wind back, pulls this lever back until the spring grabs hold of it and takes it all the way back, like that. So what you have now is, this is the rocker and the main sear, the trigger sear. When you pull the trigger, what you have is a lever that pulls that back, like that. When it's in the wound up position, this rocker will jump into a hole at the back of that wheel. And because that's going down, this comes up, and then that sear gets underneath the rocker and jams it. Let's see if I can do it while it's on camera. Like that. So now that rocker, that pin on that rocker has gone into a hole at the back of that wheel. This spring here is pushing up on the back of the rocker arm, but what's holding that in position is a little step on the back of that sear that's got underneath the bottom of that rocker arm, so the rocker can't come back. Now this is under tremendous spring pressure by this main wheel spring. This is another very strong spring, and what's trying to happen now is this is trying to all go into reverse. I've wound that up. The spring has come from the bottom here to the top there, being wound up by this chain. It's under pressure now. What's happening? The whole thing is trying to go backwards, but it can't go back because that pin is stuck in the back of the wheel and it's jammed. but the spring, this spring is trying to unwind it. It's trying to force that out of the hole at the back of here, but it can't come up because that's on a step there. It's very complicated. But if you see, I've got all this very gently now, because if I touch this thing, it'll just go off. So if you look here, this sear at the back is forward. This is sprung forward, and as soon as that is pulled back, it'll let that step come out from underneath this lever. Then the spring can force this sear out, but it's being forced out by the spring, and there's a ramp in the back of this hole. It's all very complicated, but I'll just pull this trigger back now and show you what happens if you can watch it closely. That's the whole mechanism working. It's really very, very sensitive, very sensitive. So that's the main, what they call the sear and the trigger sear, the main rocker and the trigger sear. So we'll take this trigger sear out, and then we'll take the rocker out after. So we'll just pull this pin out here. Now normally this nothing holds this in. It can't come out because the stock could be right over the top of it. So this doesn't need anything in apart from just getting hold of it and pulling it out like that. So that's the pin that comes out. Then that just comes out from underneath there like that. And that is the trigger sear. And that's the pin that holds it in. I put a pin over there for time being. That's only a pin. So we'll take out the rocker. Now this has to be really, really, there's not going to be any slop in this. Any movement in any of this mechanism, that spring will find it. And any movement, it won't hold. The pin won't hold in the back of the wheel. It's really sensitive. So what you've got here is a screw with a little keeper plate on, and all that keeper plate's doing is holding that spring into position. This is the trigger sear spring, and what that does is that acts up, that fits in that position, and when you pull the trigger, crikey, this spring here pushes up onto the bottom of that lever there, and pushes that, the end of the rocker, into that hole, into the back of the wheel, to jam it into position. Now, you can't have that spring too strong, or else what happens, it acts like a brake on the back of the wheel. So this is, it can't be too strong, it can't be too weak. It's right. It's a really sensitive spring. That it's got to be just right. Now at the end of this rocker, you'll be able to see a little chamfer. Again, this is it looks like it's just nothing. That's really important. That handle and that chamfer is really important, because what happens is there's a hole in the back of the wheel, I'll show you in a bit, that as the wheel wants to rotate, as the wheel rotates, it pushes that rocker out like that. And to get that to work is quite difficult. And this has got to be a really nice fit on that pivots, that rocker pivots on that pin. Now, any slop in this big spring will find it. And if it's loose, it won't work. It won't hold at the back here, because it's really sensitive. You're going to have to touch that thing and it's off. This is the trigger sear, and the way this works is this spring, that spring holds that foot down and is pushing it down. As you pull the trigger up, it compresses that spring like that, but also that spring is acting against that surface there. It's really difficult to explain, really difficult to explain. Again, this is just made out of trial and error, bits and pieces. I must have had this in and out 100 times to get it to work. Really, really difficult. This has got to be quite a strong piece of material, because when that's wound up and it's in the lock position, when it's in the position ready to fire, this spring is trying to force that out. If this is weak, it'll just bend it. The force there is tremendous, trying to force that up like that. Okay. So this block here holds the pivot for the sear. Now this is something I've designed. The originals weren't like this. I've bolted this from the back here with these 2 screws. Apparently the original ones, they had 2 pins in, and these pins were brazed into this back part, not screwed in. I have no facilities for brazing, so what I've done is I've made this block that holds that pivot, and there's also a stop for this spring, all in one. This is something I've designed. It's very similar to what they were, but not quite the same. So we'll take off this block, and then that will release this spring. This is the main wheel spring. So take these 2 screws. Again, these have to be really well put in, because there's a tremendous lot of force acting upon this block, because the main wheel spring is trying to push this out of its position. Right, take these 2 out, which then releases that block. This is like something I've designed, and that works. That fits there like that. And that's just a key. This is just like a keeper washer, and the spring fits inside there. This washer is just to stop this spring being able to jump out of its position. But that's how that works. So when you pull the trigger, it pushes up on that. That's the trigger spring, but then that top of the spring is actually pushing the rocker up, which is pushing this end down. It's really difficult to explain, but unless you know what's going on here, you'd never get it to work. You've got to understand what's happening with this part. Okay, now that block, as I've just took off, also this block here that fits there, this acts as a stop for this spring, because when you wind this up, it's trying to do that. So this block stops that spring, so it's got to work like that. Again, there's a tremendous lot of pressure on this point, so these have got to be really firm in position. So this can now come out like that, out of there, and that is the main wheel spring. This is the thing that spins the wheel. In the down position, it's down there, and as you wind it up, this spring comes up to the top here. It's in that position. When you pull the trigger, this slams down there, and this rotates the crankshaft here, which spins the wheel like that. Again, this has got to be free. You cannot have this at all tight. In fact, it's better a bit slacker than tighter. If it's tight, it won't work. And what happens is, again, as I was trying to explain earlier, it's very difficult to explain, is this rocker fits into that hole there, fits into a hole at the back of that wheel. Well, it's like a brake. This is acting like a brake on that wheel. It's like pushing on it all the time. So if this spring, this trigger spring, is too strong, it acts as a brake here. So you don't want this too strong, but that spring, this wheel spring has got to be able to overcome that one. So it's a balance between all the springs. They've all got to be in balance with one another. This is just a saddle that accepts the main spring. Again, I've designed this. The originals wouldn't be quite like this, they'd be slightly different. Did have something here to hold the spring, but wasn't exactly like this. This is something that I've designed. Okay, it needs to be quite strong because there's a lot of force acting on this pin. This is just this is where the trigger mechanism works. It's trigger sear, and that's, again, the pin goes in the centre, and it's just all it moves, it only moves from that position to that position, and that's when it's in the wound up position. When you pull the trigger, that moves back. Now, again, another very important part of this is another important part of this one is it looks innocuous, but this shelf there, that little kind of notch there, and that arc and that flat, that arc, that flat and that notch, very important, because what happens is when you pull the trigger, what happens is this rotates. My hands are in the way. This has got to rotate down like that. When you wind it up, when you wind this up under spring pressure, this comes up, goes up there like that, and then it fits on top of the. It's actually like that actually. So that's got to sit on top of that little shelf, like that. When you pull the trigger, when you rotate this backwards, it comes off that shelf and rotates down like that and lets this move. But when it's in the wound up position, that's got to be there, like that. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. Complicated. When you pull the trigger back, that's in when it's wound up. This is in this part here is inside the wheel, so it's down, so that sits on top of there. When you pull the trigger back, that's got to go down here. This then pivots up and lets the wheel unwind. When it's in that position, that's got to sit like that, so it doesn't sit on top. If that then gets to that position, it'll try and ride it out like that. So it's got to go from there to there to there, and it's that movement there is critical. Very difficult to get it right, very difficult. This is the pan. Take one screw out. There's a little tooth there, a little tooth. That little tooth fits in there. So that fits